Seth Walder is here, analytics specialist. Specialist? Is that a good word?
That used to be my official title. It's not anymore. But
Really?
yeah, no joke.
What is it now? Senior specialist?
I think it's just writer.
Writer. Wow. At ESPN, one of my favorite guests of this year. We had you on earlier this season after Josh Allen, and that was a big call. Do we put Seth before or after? What are people tuning in for, Seth or Josh? And I really, ever since, every time I talk to Josh, he says, God, I really got upstaged by Seth Walder. And I think that's, it's important to kind of know your limitations. That's Josh Allen's growth, is knowing his limitations, that he is the second best guest on that episode. What's going on, man? How have you viewed this NFL season? Has it been like, I don't know, I know it's a big question. You can take it anywhere you want, but like the dominant theme of the season has been what?
You know what I think is that the dominant theme of this season, it was pretty chalky. Like I know
Yeah.
people say every year, what a crazy year, or like this is so wild. And we've had some ascending teams, and Baltimore, I think, especially like took that leap, and obviously Detroit is still here and they took a little leap. But like most of the teams that we thought were going to be good going into the year were good. And then,
Yep.
teams have moved around, but I don't think it usually happens that way where we get that many teams to just sort of follow like we thought it was going to be.
And anybody who failed, it was like Joe Burrow gets hurt twice. Like
Right.
we understand that. God bless the Eagles, who completely went against trend and just completely collapsed in the second half of the season, despite having all of the ingredients they had last year. Thank God for that variety. God bless Nick Sirianni. So we're gonna do a stat that describes or blows our mind about the top four teams left in these playoffs. And what's funny to me is that Howie Roseman years ago, and I swear to you, I think the first thing we talked about in this conversation, the first time I ever met him, I swear to you, I think the first thing we talked about was trading for D'Amico Ryans. That's how old I am. I was young at this point. I was like 24, 25, but we were talking about D'Amico Ryans as a fit and how oftentimes a guy who becomes expendable in another scheme, and that's a value. It's not because he's old. It's not because he's bad. It's because literally they were just changing. That was happening in Houston. We had a long philosophical discussion about it. It was terrific. But now D'Amico Ryans, one of the best coaches in football, and we're all going to die soon. But the reason I bring it up is that he mentioned that one of the things he does is he thinks that the final four teams are a snapshot of where the league is. And so they ran a report of height, weight, speed, college, do they have 5 special teams guys who are just, core special teamers and they pay them more money? Like just run the data on all the 4 teams because they're typically the 4 best teams. And there's a little bit of luck involved what happens on Sunday. It could be one bounce, could be one penalty, but you get a pretty good, let's make sure we're not missing something with the elite. So I feel like it's a good snapshot. And certainly this year with the 4 teams, you could argue about the Lions and their defense or whatever, but this has been a special rebuild. And so it's a completely different category of team. We will start with the Detroit Lions, the team that's stealing all of our hearts. Their number 1 stat, Seth Walder.
Oh man, this is my meanest one, it's
oh no.
Yeah. Well, okay, it's funny you teed it up that way, because I do think that if you look at kind of the units across all of these teams, which are all good teams, but there's one unit that really stands out, and that's Detroit's pass defense as being a weakness. My stat though is sort of a positive spin on it, which is that Aidan Hutchinson is a player that I have been like pretty down on, I think, relative to most people for the majority of his career. He had a 13% pass rush win rate this year in the regular season. That's probably underrating him because I think he makes he is a high effort player, so he stays with it. But he doesn't win a lot quickly. But he's at 29% in the postseason. His sacks have come over the last 4 games, really. His sacks have exploded. And it makes me think, in this matchup where you have the number 1 passing offense against a team with a clear weakness in passing defense, if Detroit is going to win, Aidan Hutchinson is going to have a day. And I think that he is just so crucial to their chances going forward.
Wow. So Aidan Hutchinson is lapping the rest of his teammates in pressures this year, lapping, and he's really the only guy. I'm a big believer, and maybe it's just napkin science, or maybe I'm just oversimplifying it. But like, you look at and it changes over the course of the year. And earlier in the season, I would say, all right, well, which teams have 3 guys with over 30 pressures, 4 guys with over 20 pressures, that kind of thing. And they some due to health, due to talent, do whatever, due to scheme. Aidan Hutchinson was like at the top of the league, top 5 in pressures for a lot of the season, and nobody else was even close. And so I thought my feeling on this, and you probably don't have data about this because I'm just about to be anti-science. My feeling is you can get away with that in the playoffs because it's not about consistent, depth at pass rush, and it's about one player making a play on 3rd and 8 with the game on the line. Am I nuts? It just seems like that level of pass rush depth, which matters in week 11, doesn't matter over one game because literally, like a defensive end, one pass rusher can take over one playoff game. It's a
I
small
think,
sample size. I guess that's what the point I'm making. It's a small sample size. Aidan Hutchinson might be him.
well, I think no, but I think we're saying like kind of the same thing, which is
Yeah.
on balance, not a great situation. You would rather have a bunch of guys, but he gives you a chance to, like you
Yep.
say, have a big game, come up with a couple of big plays at big moments, and that can be enough because it is a small sample size. It's like you're whatever, you're playing blackjack, the odds are stacked against you, but it's just one hand, so whatever, and you
Just hit on 17, Brad Holmes. Just hit on 17. Just see what happens. It's one hand.
exactly. So I think I'm kind of with you, and so like that's why I say,
Yeah.
like, if they win, I would be surprised if they win and we look back and we're like, wow, they won and Hutchinson just kind of zeroed out in that game. He's also not, it works for them that he plays not opposite Trent Williams, so
Yes.
that helps. Like, you can sort of feel like, oh, maybe they would have had a good pass rusher on the other side. He's going to be erased anyway, so
Yeah.
that helps.
All right. Let's flip it. Niners. What do you got?
To me, the Niners are sort of the inverse, where okay, you look at the 4 main units of a football team, right? Passing offense, rushing offense, passing defense, rushing defense. The Niners are the only team in the NFL that are top 5 in the most important 3, which would be in order: passing offense, passing defense, rushing offense. They're top 5 in all 3 of those. They're number 1 in passing offense. Like, it's just the best possible way to construct a team, and I think that it just demonstrates, like, okay, how good
Yeah.
they are. That I'm going to combine 2 stats that are sort of
Yeah,
related
please.
here. The other thing is, people are freaking out about, okay, Deebo Samuel goes out last week. Oh, wow, they have big splits. Deebo Samuel's hurt. I mean, to me, it just speaks to their strength. He's their 4th best weapon, and everyone's going crazy. Like, it's absurd. And I'm saying this in the context of, like, Brandon Ayuk's season is so underrated and incredible.
Yes.
This guy was the 6th best yards per route run season since 2007 this year.
Lord. Okay.
Like, outrageous. He had the same open score as CD Lamb.
Yeah.
We're talking about, right? And I think on a per route basis probably was better than CD Lamb. And the only reason why you have Lamb at so many more yards is because the 49ers were just winning so often. They didn't have to keep passing the ball. And so Ayuk I do this big story every year, top 100. I do a 100 player MVP ballot. I did it last week, and I had Ayuk at 15, and I think there's no reason why he's absolutely that high. And to me, that just speaks to, like, the plethora of riches that this team has, and the reason why they're so dangerous. Like, I didn't even say the words Christian McCaffrey or George Kittle or Brock Purdy, and they're all on the same side of the ball.
Can I ask a stupid question? So I was in the wide receiver metrics on ESPN the other day, and Ayuk is, as you said, number 1 most open guy in football. Deebo Samuel is the most yards after catch guy in football, and it's not even close. It's like 10 percentage points, whatever you want to call it, the rating of 10 more than second best in the NFL. How much more valuable is it to, like, if you're drafting a guy, is it more valuable statistically to be the open guy or the yak guy?
The open guy. It's not that close even. And it's the skill that we find to be, it's a skill that, like, in the moment correlates strongest with yards per route run, which I think is the best kind of box score metric, but it's also the most stable. So the guys that are open consistently are open year after year. Now, to be fair to Deebo here, like he basically broke the scale of the yak metric like a couple years ago. The reason why no one has a good yak score ever is because Deebo's score a couple years ago was just so beyond what anyone else has done, and year after year, he performs so highly that
Yeah.
like, okay, I mean, this guy is repeating that skills. I don't want to take away from him, but just in general, if you're drafting a player, you're looking at two guys of what you would consider to be relatively equal strength. I would want the guy that gets open. It's the most important skill.
They coach their guys. Obviously, you draft a certain amount of it, but they coach their guys. And not to toot my own horn, I did a piece about George Kittle a couple years ago, and literally, Embry, the tight ends coach at that point, coached George Kittle and was just like, "Hey, stay in bounds and just run it, guys, and like good things will happen." And Kittle was like, "What do you? This is you're being an idiot. Like they're not just going to get on my way." And then he just started doing it, and then he was just like, "Oh, this like one out of every 3 times, this just works. Like I'm not going to go out of bounds. I'm going to run right at these guys, and sometimes they'll fall down." They'll just miss the tackle, they'll arm tackle, whatever, and like good things happen. And it's coached there. And I think it's a mixture of talent and scheme and obviously coaching point. But like you have to draft, like you're not gonna be able to do that if you have a bunch of 5'6", 180 pound guys. That's not gonna happen. They have to be able to keep moving their legs and all that stuff. But like it's an actual philosophy, and it's really incredible to see what Deebo and Kittle and those guys have been able to do from the yak side and the open side. And you combine those two, and guess what you have? Kyle Shanahan's offense. It's a beautiful thing. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words. Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, let's go to the other game. The Chiefs. I'm so confused by this. I'm doing everything I've ever wanted always wanted to avoid, which is picking based on name brand. Like that's what I'm doing here. Help me on the Chiefs.
Okay, so this is not my number. This is the obvious number, but it's an important starting point. 5.9%.
Is it wins? Is it wins?
Yeah.
Is Kirk, as Kirk Ferentz says, wins per game?
That's right. Playoff wins too.
Playoff wins per game. Yep.
Okay, 5.9% drop rate. That's worse than the league. Okay, I think that fits the narrative. We can do better than that, right? We look at catch score would be like the more advanced way to look at that, right? It's not because a drop is just a really obvious pass, but that doesn't cover like the breadth of all conceivable passes. Okay, they have a 22 catch score across the team, worse than the NFL. It's like matching all the narrative there checks out, right? To me, the number that really stands out is this. When a quarterback drops back to pass, there's 3 types of plays that can unfold. They can pass the ball, they can get sacked, or they can scramble. If we just look at times when the quarterbacks pass the ball, Patrick Mahomes ranked 18th in QBR this season. Not good. The reason why their offense has still been able to be as successful as it is because what he does in the other 2 phases, sacks and scrambles. So he's an elite scrambler. He's hyper efficient, second most total EPA on scrambles. And he doesn't take sacks, which is a quarterback skill, and he's done it for years and years. Josh Allen and Mahomes had kind of weirdly similar seasons in this regard. So Mahomes' QBR on just those 2 outcomes, so scrambles and sacks, was 83, which ranked second, only behind Allen. Josh Dobbs ranked third. His was 25. So like what I'm saying is every other quarterback in the league, and this is like such a flaw of passer rating, right? We're just looking at the passes. And what I'm saying is you have these other 2 phases, for lack of a better word, and Mahomes and Allen are so excellent at those other things. Like, don't let that be hidden that he does that so well. And here's where I think it comes to your name brand thing, but I think it gives maybe some optimism, which is this is new. Last year, when we talk about Mahomes on passing plays, literally he passed the ball plays, he was first in QBR that year. First. And so to me, it sounds hand-wavy, it sounds wishy-washy to be like, I don't know. I mean, he could just pull out some magic, but I think it's totally fair to say we know he has it. We know he has it in him. The situation
Yeah.
is different, but not that different from last year. And if he could find some sort of middle ground to pair with the best defense he's ever had, that of course they could beat the Ravens. Of course they could.
It's driving me nuts. I'm sure you have this because you have a bunch of fancy stats that it's hard for. I was looking at Lamar yesterday and his numbers under pressure. His numbers under pressure are very, very, very good. A lot better than Mahomes's. What we don't have though is just like, did you make a good play? Like, did you like? I know it's hard to quantify, but like, did you get 9 yards when you were under pressure? And like the whether that's the legs or the throwaways or like, I mean, I'm sure maybe success rate helps on this, but like, I wish this is a watch the film argument here for me. But like, I was on PFF yesterday just looking at the pressure numbers, and I'm just like, this doesn't tell the story. This only tells the story when they complete a pass from the pocket or throw a pass from the pocket, and just completely different. Or take a sack, obviously, but like, did you extend the play? Did you get out of it? I mean, like, that's where you marry it. But like, I wish there was a way to incorporate legs when you're under pressure.
I think
That's
that
my
matters
take.
totally. That
That's my
absolutely
take.
matters.
Hey, I have a question off of the drop thing you mentioned. I saw somebody say this yesterday. Don't remember who it was. Congratulations to them. Great point. The drops don't matter because it's still a low probability event. If you're saying 6% leads the league, 94% of the time it's not a drop. Is that person off base? Is it actually matter? I mean, like I saw the stat that Mahomes led the league in dropped yardage basically, and Lamar was actually up there as
Yeah, he
well.
is.
What's the quantifiable impact of having a receiving core that just drops passes?
I think it does matter. I understand the point, and that's where I guess I would point to. Firstly, the difference between 6% and 2%. Well, 4% of plays, you're talking like every 25 play was a completion versus not. Football's a pretty small margin game. That's not
Yeah,
nothing. We're talking like, okay, that's that's actually a completion and a half per game, maybe. But on top of that, I think that's where I would point back to catch score, right? Let's
yeah,
evaluate, okay, fine. The 6% of plays, we're only talking about a percentage of the plays that even could be drops or even close enough. But it extends the other way too. What were the balls that were not, they were 50-50, but some teams are catching them
yeah,
and some teams are not. It's not a drop if you don't make that play. Or like, I don't know, I think about Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett all the time. And there's all these passes that no one would blink an eye if they'd gone incomplete,
yeah.
but they didn't. And so it matters on the other end of the spectrum too. And so that's where I would like bring it back. Like, okay, let's evaluate every one of these throws in terms of the possibility of catching it. And when we do that, Kansas City is a huge problem. So I would say there is some validity to saying like drop rate is overselling it, but I don't think it is true or I do think it is also true that Kansas City has a true issue here.
So there's an old political truism, which is that if you're laid off, the unemployment rate isn't 5%, it's 100%. And with drop rate, it's like Stephon Diggs' drop rate is 100% right now because he dropped the biggest pass in like a decade in Buffalo. So I it's like it's a total perception type of stat. If MVS, let me tell you something.
I was just gonna.
I was gonna say if MVS catches that pass against Philadelphia, or like no one would notice some of the other warts. It's only there are guys who will have. I remember Amari Cooper had the drops his last year, according to PFF in Dallas, and I was like, oh man, he drops all these passes. Then he got to in Vegas, he had the drops. Then he gets to Dallas and he doesn't have the drops anymore. That could be a catchable ball. That could just be luck. I mean, like you just have 10 lapses in a concentration, and it's completely different. So I don't know. It's a complicated thing, and the Chiefs seem to be doing fine. Are you wearing a hat that
Two
says
big catches last week?
exactly right? Are you wearing a hat that says analytics?
I am. Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Got to
Okay.
represent.
Is there any reason for that?
Well, I like the hat. Is
Yeah.
one.
No, but like, what is the hat? Did you order a hat that says analytics?
I did. It's like this random internet company. It's like a basketball thing, and
Yeah.
yeah, I like the hat. Got to rep the team.
The team being analytics.
Yeah,
ESPN analytics needs a hat.
There's been some fights on the internet. We got to stand strong.
I have seen that. I'm taking no sides. Sloan didn't. I'm not even going to Sloan this year. So like, maybe I'll just be on team never go for two because of that. Hey, all right, let's get to the Ravens before we BS for a second.
If you look at McVay's Shanahan offenses and how they performed that played against the Ravens this season, they had an EPA per play of 0.08. So good offenses, obviously. We know that. But when they played the Ravens, minus 0.06. Okay. So big swing. Now, part of that is like, well, duh, right? They're a good offense. I mean, they're a good defense. Of course, they're going to be worse. But we also know, like, by and large, offense drives games. And the fact that this defense can have such an impact on this tree of offenses that have been so successful throughout the league, to me, is really notable. And it's super notable if this ends up being Baltimore, San Francisco in the Super Bowl. So why, like, okay, so that's like leads the obvious question, like, okay, what are they doing? And that's where I'm not smart enough, so I got to ask other people. And what I hear is like whole confluence of things, but they are super well built. The things I hear are like elite. It was described to me as elite preparation. So in like a Shanahan offense, you have all these different wrinkles or alignment wrinkles, and Baltimore will handle each of those differently. They have their own sets of rules for very specific differences. They have smart players who can make those changes and they don't bust. And so they just don't allow that major problem. They play a lot of too high, so they're not going to get these massive explosive plays against them. They also leverage wise defend the middle of the field with authority, also because they have great players in the middle of the field. So they're built up the middle, and that's unideal for the McVay Shanahan offenses. And to me, that all makes sense. And I think that's potentially a really important thing if we come up to a Baltimore San Francisco Super Bowl, because offense dominates, and if they can be a counter to that, I think that absolutely gives them a chance. And the way that they played against Houston, I felt like also gave even more confidence that holds water.
Do you make picks, by the way? Are you going to make picks on this podcast?
Yeah, am I going? Well, I'm still torn on the AFC game. I mean, I am back and forth. I think like Kansas City not being as good against the run, it seems pretty unideal against Baltimore, but I also buy into everything. Like one of the stats I gave you about Kansas City, that those all to me, I think there's a lot to like there. And I don't know. I'm back and forth there.
This Joe Tooney thing is frightening because that's a huge thing with their interior pressure.
Yeah, I mean, their interior of the Chiefs line has been such a stalwart.
Yep.
For not just this year, for a long time. Yeah. So like, I don't know. Wait, tell me what you think. You're also still torn on that. I have to make
going Niners
tomorrow.
I'm going Niners and I'm going Ravens. Okay. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like picking against the Chiefs, but I'm going Ravens.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. I'm going Niners, and I will pick one of the two teams.
I will say, when you mentioned elite preparation, no one has accused this podcast of ever having elite preparation, but you, Seth Walder, had elite preparation. Thanks so much. Check them out. When's the column running? Your pick? When's your pick running?
Oh, I think those come out on Friday.
All right, ESPN.com. Who's the most surprising guy on your 100-person MVP ballot?
That made the list altogether, or where?
Yeah, the guy where you're just like, whoa, I can't believe this guy's on the list.
Okay, that's a good question. I'm going to scan the list right this second.
Yeah, please.
And someone that made the list that I couldn't believe made the list. This is hard because I like all these players. So this is the answer to sort of the answer. Garrett Wilson, I ranked really high, 45th, which I think is really high for the production he had. And the reason why I did it was, I put this list together. I look at a million things, but I believe like strongly in talking to people in the league and colleagues and whatever. They're all super smart, and crowdsourcing is super valuable. And so I send a draft list out to folks in the league and ask them to tell me what they think, and they just kind of give unprompted. And multiple people gave me. I had Wilson off the list at the start, and then I had multiple people say, you need Garrett Wilson on here, and you need him on here high. That
Oh,
if you
wow.
look at his actual level of play, he was one of the best wide receivers in the league this season. It's just, Tim Boyle and co aren't going to get him the ball, but like actually his level of play was exceptionally high. And so and then it was backed up. Like his open score
Yeah.
was really high. And so I was like, okay, this is all checking out. And I do think that we wide receivers we're playing with terrible quarterbacks, like of course they're hidden. And that to me, I think was really interesting, and it'll be really interesting next year.
Seth Walder is not hidden. We're getting him the ball. Thanks so much for coming on, buddy.
Thanks, Kevin.